Months after the fire gutted the National Assembly building, it's still unclear what it'll cost to fix the damage. Public Works Minister Patricia de Lille has assured the public that the document will be ready before arson suspect Zandile Mafe is due back in court. Lindsay Dentlinger is following the story for us. She joins us now live. So Parliament's Oversight Committee was supposed to get the final estimate today. That didn't happen, Lindsay. Why?
So, Shahan, we heard from the consultants who have been working on this project that they were, at the time this meeting happened this afternoon, they said they were 98% of the way in completing that report. They said quantity surveyors needed a lot more time to establish the extent of the damage and, more importantly, what it will cost to repair it. And so that is also a critical aspect that really relates to the criminal investigation and the criminal charges which Zandile Mafe is facing. And so perhaps by now, Shahan, or maybe later this evening, that report will finally be in Patricia de Lille's inbox. They told Parliament today that that final report would be concluded by the end of today. This committee was due to sit about 2 weeks ago, and that meeting was postponed until today. So we didn't really get any new update in terms of what we already know in terms of the extent of the damage and the cost thereof. Only that the consultant said when last they briefed Parliament, you will recall that the basement had more than 1 million litres of water pumped into it due to firefighting efforts. But with that water now cleared and with them able to having had access to that part of the building, they could say that there was no serious structural damage to that part. But as we know, the damage is quite extensive. But as I say, no cost attached to that right now. And we also heard from the South African Heritage Resources Agency saying they're keeping a very close watch on the salvage operation there. They want to be sure that whatever is removed from that building is not, it really does need to be removed, and that as much of what can be preserved is preserved. And so they also need to issue permits for any salvage operations there and for any modifications that get made. But they say they can't make any pronouncement on what kind of impact this will have on heritage aspects of the parliamentary precinct until this final report is tabled.
So police investigations also not yet concluded. What are the delays there?
So we heard both from the head of the Hawks, Godfried Lebeya, talking about the investigation itself. There is still a forensic science investigation outstanding, and he said this is because it's linked to this report of the engineers that need to be finalized. They do actually need to put a cost to this damage because it informs the kind of charges that Zandile Mafe is facing, and for that case to be transferred to the High Court. He also made note that there were still some other parts of their investigations, for example, a fire report from the SAPS's own fire investigators that was still outstanding. And then we also heard another security aspect. We heard about the 3 police officers who we know were suspended in the wake of this fire, who were on duty around the 30 or so hours. Zandile Mafe is alleged to have been wandering around that precinct before allegedly starting that fire. And we heard that their disciplinary hearings will start imminently. One will start on the 31st of May, and the other 2 will be facing their hearing on the 8th and the 9th of June. So that process is moving, and the SAPS telling MPs that those officers have been redeployed. They work in police stations elsewhere and are no longer on the parliamentary precincts until such time as there's an outcome to their disciplinary hearings. And just one other aspect I want to point out, Shahan, as regards security, because what we've been talking about in the months that have gone past is how on earth Zandile Mafe was able to allegedly break into the parliamentary precinct when we have police stationed at these 5 entrances. And we now know that a committee that has been spoken about since 2018 and nothing's ever happened about establishing it has now been established between Parliament and the SAPS to discuss the security security-related matters, to look at securing the perimeter border of Parliament and to secure the access points to Parliament. So Patricia de Lille telling Parliament today that she promises that this report will be processed. She will be consulting with the presiding officers before the 9th of June when Zandile Mafe is due back in court, because you will remember just last week the magistrate saying she won't tolerate any further delays and she wants all these outstanding reports that feed into this criminal investigation to be finalised. But here is a summary of the proceedings as they unfolded in Parliament this afternoon. Quantity surveyors have been working around the clock to make final determinations of the extent of the damage and the cost of repair of these historic buildings.
I want to give members the assurance, I've discussed it with the Speaker this morning, that we will make sure that once we receive the final report today, that we start processing it so that we could meet the deadline long before the 9th of June.
The Hawk say its investigation reports are also still not finalised and are needed before Zandile Mafe's case can be transferred to the High Court.
But there is a certain element that the experts need from those who are conducting some of the investigation from the DPW. There are technical things. There are certain aspects that are needed from certain engineers, which will form part of the forensic science completion of its report.
Meanwhile, the SA Heritage Resources Agency says it will be keeping a close watch on the salvage and restoration operation. 3 officers who were on duty during the 30 hours Mafe is alleged to have roamed around the precinct before the fire broke out will be facing disciplinary hearings in the next 2 weeks.
The 3 members, we have temporarily placed them outside Parliament. It means they are deployed within the stations outside, the protection services, which is temporary until we finalize the disciplinary process. Then would get the findings, which then would say whether it's dismissal or what have you.
Parliament and the police have now established a long overdue joint committee that will see to securing Parliament's perimeter and its access points. Lindsay Dentlinger, Cape Town.